Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor, the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. We're now on Red Circle as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. You also can find a lot of our content these days on playback, so check that out. We tweet that out from the Five Reasons Sports account. Not only do we sit there and watch live streams with you of games and comment and do our own broadcast, which you can listen to, but we're going to be putting more original content there as well. So check it out. Just go to my Twitter feed, 5reasonsports.com, and it shows you there how to sign up. It's easy and it's free, at least to sign up through playback. Also check out 5reasonsports.com, spell that one out, and check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. That includes Miami Gaming Parties. This seems like a really good idea for a rainy day. Miami Gaming Parties delivers private custom video game tournaments for gamers and their lucky guests. It's truly custom. You pick the game and the package. So any game, you want to play Madden, you want to play Call of Duty, whatever it is you want to play, you pick the game and the package, premium or black tie VIP for 8 to 16 people. They bring everything at Miami Gaming Parties, everything from PS5s to trophies for the winners. You can play at home or at a venue of your choosing, and they have free on-site consultations. So they'll go through everything with you. Birthday party, bachelor party, anniversary, corporate event, anything you want to celebrate, check them out. It's at miamigamingparties.com. That's miamigamingparties.com, or go to their Twitter handle at gaming parties, or their Instagram, Miami_gaming_parties. But just go to miamigamingparties.com. They have all the information there, and set up your private custom video game tournament today. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. I got Alex Toledo. You can follow him at Tropical Blanket. No Greg today. He's actually hosting, of all things, a Knicks Cavaliers stream, as that game is at halftime as we're recording this episode. Two of Greg's favorite teams. He's hosting that on playback right now. Well, most of your favorite team is the Miami Heat, although it didn't feel like that before their play-in game against the Bulls, because the majority of our audience wanted the team to lose. But they did not lose, and so they got on a plane to Milwaukee today. Jimmy was wearing some kind of Ducks jersey, and everybody headed up there after Jimmy basically not only won the game for the Heat along with Max Strus, but tried to get Max more money afterwards with his comments in the postgame and on Instagram. We're going to frame this way. I don't think anybody – well, let's start here, okay? Because Greg's not here, so he doesn't have to interject. Is anybody picking the Heat in this series? Don't everybody speak at once. Brady, is everybody picking the Heat in this series? Or are you not? I'm not telling you to. I'm just asking the question. Is anybody here picking the Heat in this series? Because I'm not.
No.
Brady?
No.
Alex?
No.
Okay. All right. So nobody's picking the Heat in this series. So this is how we're going to frame this, okay? I went through some of the numbers today, and they're frightening, frankly. This is not the best Bucks team by the numbers that's come into the playoffs in the past few years. Actually, they're fifth in the league in net rating, even though they led the league in wins with 58. So they're not the dominant team. A couple of years ago, they came in with like a net rating of like plus 11. But I do think it's the best equipped team for the postseason that they've ever had. And one of the reasons that their numbers are a little bit deceiving is that Chris Middleton only played 32 games this year, and he only averaged 24 minutes a game. So he was essentially a part-time player for half of the season, not even half of the season this year. And also, Milwaukee fortified its bench as the season went on with some of the additions they made, a couple of whom are very familiar to the Miami Heat, in Jay Crowder and Goran Dragic. Even though Dragic doesn't seem to be part of the rotation, Crowder is. So I'm going through these numbers, and I'm like, okay, look, this team is not as dominant as some other teams. But when you start to break them down a little bit and you realize the pieces that they have that are going to give the Heat enormous problems in this series, we are struggling to come up with ways that the Heat can compete. And so that's what this episode is going to be about. Not how the Heat win this series, How do they compete? Because if they can compete, anything can happen. A sprained ankle, a hot shooting night, that kind of stuff. And maybe this is stretched out more than we thought. And maybe the Heat would pull what would be one of the biggest upsets, honestly, in NBA history, okay, in terms of difference in record, where the Heat have had to come from here. This is not at all like it was 3 years ago, where it was a mild upset that the Heat beat the Bucks in the bubble. This would be a massive upset with the Heat beating the Bucks this time. I'll just give you one stat that just jumped out to me, and then I'm going to go through it with you guys to figure out ways that maybe the Heat can compete in this series. The Miami Heat have one player who shoots 37% or better from three, and that's Tyler Herro, and it's barely, okay? It's 37.8%. The Bucks have 8 players, 7 of whom are in their current rotation, that shoots 37% or better from three. They have 4 players who shoot 40% or better from three. And by talking about those players, we're not even mentioning their best player, obviously, who is arguably the best player in the world in Giannis. I still think he is, regardless of who wins MVP. And also Chris Middleton, who typically does shoot close to 35 to 37% from three, but was down a little bit as a part-time player. So you're talking about surrounding Giannis and Middleton. Middleton, who's won a gold medal. Two guys have won championships. Middleton, a multi-time All-Star. Giannis, arguably the best player in the world. You're talking about surrounding them with 8 shooters in their rotation, okay, all on reasonable volume also, okay, and also elite defenders, some of these guys, because one of those guys who shoots 37% or better is their center, Brook Lopez, who, in my view, is the defensive player of the year, even though it's going to go to Jaren Jackson Jr. And then we talk about a guy in Drew Holiday who is, depending on the day and the health of Middleton, the second or third best player on the team, who in my view is still the best perimeter defender in the NBA and just had one of his most efficient offensive seasons as a true number 2 complement to Giannis. So we're going to go through this and try to figure out ways that the Heat, who are going up there on less than 36 hours, okay, of rest, get on a plane to go to that building to play a team that has a guy who's going to be top 3 in MVP, a guy who's going to be top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year, as another guy who's arguably the best perimeter defender in the league, 8 3-point shooters, an experienced coach, and a whole bunch of champions. So I'll start with you here, Alex. Give me one way, and we're going to go back and forth here. Give me one way the Heat can compete.
One way? I mean, that's just a crazy question. There's no one way for the Heat to compete or win against the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, this whole thing is just going to be a grind. And we've already seen this before. Obviously, the Heat have played them twice in the Jimmy era. We know how differently both played out and the context behind all of that. Where I'm at with this, and I'm with you. I think, the numbers don't really point to an elite team when you look at the offense. And we know that's why the Middleton coming back thing is just scary. Like, it's very scary because I was looking through some of their stuff. For example, they had the 12th best half-court offense this season, despite how little Middleton played, compared to his typical season. That's scary. Another thing that's just kind of, I think, relevant here, the Milwaukee Bucks have drained about 39% of their threes since the bubble series. The second series, the one that ended with the sweep, right? Then you look at their defense, 3rd best defensive rebounding percentage, the 4th best defensive rating, 4th best in transition, 3rd best in the half court. And then you try to see, okay, well, maybe there's something you could attack. Like, what do they give up? They don't give up threes. They give up the least amount of shots at the rim. They defend everywhere at a high level. The only place that they give up shots is in the mid-range, and they give it up the most in the league. The Heat are going to have to grind this out with some old-school basketball, I think, with Jimmy, Bam, and Tyler having to get to a lot of end-of-shot clock, get into your spot, and pull up. And I think it's going to be a lot of in-between shots and mid-range shots because that's what the Bucks are giving up. And it's scary because you already know you're not going to be able to get offensive rebounds versus this team. You already know they're a great transition defense. Like, it's going to be hard to try to get more field goal attempts. Like, we've known that's been their blueprint all season. The one thing I think you could point to that's a little bit positive for the Heat is that the Bucks are 19th in turnover percentage, so They're not great there. Maybe you can turn them over a little bit, and that's where I kind of think it gets interesting to think about what Spo is going to utilize as his defensive strategy. I suspect it's going to be more of the aggressive blitzing defense because they just can't match up with the Bucks one-on-one unless they're starting like Kevin Love to match up on Brook and Bam on Giannis. And I don't think he's gonna go that way, especially with just all the screening and all the ground he's gonna have to cover with all the shooters. I don't know that he's gonna do that. It is kind of a fun thing to think about because you do want to see Bam on Giannis, but I think we're gonna see Bam more on the back line, perhaps switching, which I don't want to see too much of because I think they're going to get a lot of open threes and offensive rebounds if the Heat do too much switching. But I think there's going to be aggressive defense in general. You have to turn them over. And then on offense, you just got to hope that your 3 stars come to play and essentially that your role players hit threes. And so it's like you need absolutely everything to go right because of how small the margin for error is. Like their defense also fouls the second least. It's just there is no easy answer is what I'm trying to say here. You have to do everything just about perfectly.
Well, that's what Jimmy said. We have to play perfect. This reminds me of the Big Three era, but on the other side. So the Big Three era, the Heat would go in as a number 1 or number 2 seed. I actually think they were only in the number 1 seed twice because Indiana was twice, or Chicago was once. I'm sorry. They might have only been the number 1 seed once. But they would go in as a number 1 or number 2 seed. And if you remember their opponents during that, they played Philadelphia that first year, which actually Drew Holiday was on that team, along with Thad Young, Andre Iguodala, Lou Williams. So there was a collection of good players there. Okay, the Heat won in 5. The next year, I believe it was the New York year, correct? I think that was Stoudemire and some of that crew that came in there, and that was the fire extinguisher year, right? And some of the other players were on that team, and Carmelo, and so there were good players on that team. Miami, I think, won that series in 5. There was the Milwaukee year. The next year, right, which I think Dwayne didn't even, from what I remember, Dwayne didn't even play the last game of that series. They sat him, and that was a sweep. And that was a team with Monte Ellis and Brandon Jennings, and they added J.J. Redick during the season. And then the last year they played Charlotte. We actually talked, Reese, who did we talk to about that series recently? Oh, it was Cody Zeller. And the Heat swept that one. There was no Al Jefferson was hurt in that series, and they beat them. And we would talk about this the other way, Brady. Like we would talk about it like, okay, the Heat aren't losing this series unless this and this and this and this happen. Now, I don't think any of those teams had a player as good as Jimmy Butler, okay, on an 8 seed, okay? Particularly playoff Jimmy Butler, because Carmelo was not playoff Jimmy Butler, okay? None of those Philadelphia players I would think are even as good as Bam, to be honest, and some of the scorers on those teams were not as good as Tyler. So this is – on paper, a better number 8 seed than you typically see. But the same applies. They have to be perfect to beat this team, which has already won a championship. So you give me one way that they can make this thing competitive.
I think it's playing. I mean, Alex listed a ton of different things because he's right. Like it has to be everything at once. Like it can't just probably be one of these things. But I think the one way is Jimmy Butler is going to be Jimmy Butler. Like we know that. But Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo need to actually play probably the exact opposite the way they did the other night in that playing game against the Bulls. Like pretty much Jimmy said after the Hawks game, we have to play exactly the opposite of we did tonight to win the next playing game. That's exactly what goes for Bam Adebayo and Tyler Herro. I look at even the stats that Alex was just throwing out, the fact that they don't give up a ton of threes, they don't give up shots at the rim. What did they give up? They give up just a ton of pull-up jumpers. What did Tyler Herro and Bam Adebayo do, more often than anybody? Pull-up jumpers. Like, it's just constant Tyler Herro pull-ups against Milwaukee. We talked about it last year around this time where we said Tyler was talking about in that Game 7 between Boston and Milwaukee. Like, he knows who he'd rather see. It was Milwaukee. So now it's time to show it and kind of get into those shots that he likes. Same goes for Bam. Like, a lot of these shots he's been missing has been shots that he likes. You just have to hit those shots. Like, in terms of matchups, that's what makes it interesting. Like, we look at the Bulls game, for instance, Pat Bev and Alex Caruso were absolutely hounding him, specifically Pat Bev. Like, they were not letting him breathe around a screen, Tyler. Like, he was coming off a screen. They were there. They were going under, over. They were just glued to him. Now take that to the next extent, to your point before, Ethan, about Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday is going to be guarding Tyler Herro, and he is not going to give him an inch. Like, you could talk about operating and drop. It doesn't mean they're just going to give you an open shot in the mid-range. Drew Holiday is going to be kind of glued to you, so you have to be able to kind of take that. Then we talk about the shots from Bam against Vucevic. What is we think is going to happen with Brook Lopez? We had the Brook Lopez conversation for so long, and in the regular season, we finally felt like he beat those allegations because he started kind of playing better in those Milwaukee games. So he has to hit those shots that Brook is giving him. So I think in terms of those matchups, you're giving one outlet. Like, yeah, if Max Strus has a 30-point game, that might not be enough to beat this Bucks team if Bam and Tyler are giving you what they gave the other night. Like, that is just pretty much it. And we could talk about matchups and all. Like, yeah, Bam and Tyler are favored in this matchup more than Jimmy is. Like, Jimmy would rather see a switching team where he could find matchups instead of operating like this. But Jimmy Butler is going to be Jimmy Butler. And maybe we'll look back to that 2021 series and say, well, that wasn't the case. Like, that wasn't the case for anybody. So the fact is, I think Jimmy's going to be him. And it's weird because even if we're like trying to like judge things, like kind of measuring stick on what this series is going to be, it's a weird dynamic because there was like we have like no evidence to base this off of on the season. Like, there was only one game Giannis played. So it's like we only have a 1-game sample size. That was the game, I think it was in early February. I was looking at it before. The Bucks won 123-115, and Giannis had 35. And I know these are base numbers, but the fact is Giannis had 35. He had a really big game. Jimmy had 32. If there's a way that Giannis can match Jimmy, it's really just on Bam and Tyler to kind of take it to that next level. And I know role players play a part, and their bench is probably going to go insane. And the fact that I think Portis had a big game that game as well. But what makes it interesting, and the reason I'm going to tie this all together, Ethan, I know we're going to get into this a little bit more, but is the fact that they have to make decisions on the starting lineup, because I think that's where things get interesting. Like, there's so many different ways that we could say it. Like, yeah, Max Strus just had a huge 31-point game, but can he be your starting power forward in this game against this front line? We could have the other discussion about Kevin Love. I brought up the fact that it might make sense to put Kevin Love into this game just to guard Brooks. Then Bam could guard Giannis. And it's not only the Bam on Giannis factor, it's the fact that I think you need Jimmy guarding Middleton. Like, you really do. In this game, I think Middleton came off the bench. He had 24. Like, you cannot survive with Bam on Brook, then sliding Jimmy, let's say, on Giannis. Then who's guarding Middleton? Like, yeah, you could say Caleb when he comes off the bench, but now you just can't in these games get punched in the mouth early. And some of these lineups that they're potentially putting out there feels like they're setting themselves up for that. So could it be Max Strus? Could it be Kevin Love? I know a lot of people on Twitter were saying potentially Haywood Highsmith, which would be very interesting. The fact that in the first playoff series, Haywood Highsmith starting at power forward, there's some different ways they can go, but I think that's going to be a deciding factor.
All right, when we come back, we're going to get into the starting lineup more specifically and what some of the matchups are, because this is the single biggest reason as you take a look at how you're going to guard Giannis and how many options the Bucks have to guard Jimmy. This is why this thing has flipped here over the past few years. So we're going to talk about that, as well as strategy in terms of how the defense has changed for the Bucks a little bit, and also my thoughts on Tyler here. Before we do, use the code 5, F-I-V-E, at prizepicks.com. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Do not pick Trae Young to go over 8.5 assists in a game that Atlanta's going to be trailing the entire time, and then sit there for an entire half waiting for Quinn Snyder to put him back in the game so we can get that last assist. I would advise against doing that because that's what I did today. But go to Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. You can download Prize Picks from the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, or prizepicks.com. Again, Prize Picks just rated the #1 fastest growing sports product in the country. And for your gambling needs, and for as well your legal gambling needs, by the way, because it is legal. And also we've got a tournament on there, which you can still get into before 1 o'clock on Monday. So even after these series is finished, we're doing a bracket there in concert with the Twitter feed, the NBA Central. So it's the entire NBA bracket, and you basically pick it, and there's $250 up for grabs there. So go to Better Edge, use the code 5RSN at Better Edge, or just check out, again, the Twitter feed. We're going to post the link directly there. Pick the brackets. You don't have to pick every game. You're just picking series winners all the way through the championship. My finals is, and you can see where I'm going in this series, Bucks over Suns in the finals. So go to betteredge.com, use the code 5RSN, or again, click the link directly. You get $20 to play. It's only $5 to enter, and you can win up to $250. It's a pretty good deal, right? You're basically playing with somebody else's money. So Prize Picks, use the code 5, Better Edge, use the code 5RSN. RSN. Starting lineup. They don't have one. I mean, that's the whole thing. We're at this point. This is 85th game of the season, right? If you include the 2 play-in games. They don't have one. They have 3 starters who we've talked about the fit all season long. And then beyond that, it's just mix and match at the other spots. So you really could go any direction here, Alex. But I'm with Brady. Like, it seems weird to say a guy who just scored 31 in an elimination game has to come out of the lineup. You know, I just don't see who he plays. I don't see who Max guards in that lineup. And going back to when they were able to deal with Giannis, going back to the bubble, they had a guy who's now on the other side now in Jay Crowder. They had Jimmy, they had Bam. They could even use Derek Jones Jr. for athleticism in spots, although they didn't do it a lot during that series. They just had so many different ways that they could go. They don't have a lot of different ways to go now, but it does seem like the only options are you maybe go you use, if you don't want to use Jimmy up on him the whole time, which is asking a lot, because I'm with Brady. I think he's got to guard Middleton. I mean, you're looking right now at what? At again, Martin, Highsmith, Love, but Love's not going to guard Giannis. That just allows Bam to guard Giannis. Who would you start?
There is, again, no easy answer like that. I feel like that's going to be the theme for me when it comes to talking about this Bucks matchup, because you kind of have to like come up with a plan and then a backup plan for when the first plan inevitably doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm not expecting him to start with Kevin Love. I think, that's something I would do like on 2K, for example, but I'm not expecting Spo to do that in real life. I think it might be a little bit too much to ask for. And so from there, it's like I've been wanting Caleb to start, but physically, he can't be the one matching up on Giannis, right? And this all also, I think, depends on what Spo is going to do with his defensive strategy. Like I mentioned before, if they're going to be sending 2 more often than not, you definitely don't start Kevin Love. Maybe that's where Caleb fits in more often if he's not just, trying to guard Giannis one-on-one. They're just going to try to do something similar to what the Nets were throwing at Embiid today, and like what we've seen the Heat throw at Embiid and guys like Giannis before, where, when they get a post catch, you're sending 2 and you're trying to turn him into a passer. You just got to be sharp with the rotations. It's really, really, really risky against a team that takes the 4th most threes and makes it at a top 10 3-point percentage, right? Again, despite the barely having Middleton, who's another great scorer. Like, it's just a lot to ask for to constantly be in rotation. So I don't know what the defensive strategy is going to be, which makes it hard to decide what the starting lineup is going to be. The Highsmith idea is a fun one to think about too, because he is a little bit stronger than Caleb. And again, like, anybody not named Bam is not going to be guarding Giannis one-on-one. I think that's going to be the big thing. Like, there's always going to be, if not just a straight double on the catch, there's going to be the wall, like we talked about before, for years. But more than that, that's why I think he's going to end up going to a mobile wing. So I think it's going to be Caleb or Highsmith. I don't know how you guard Max. I mean, how you start Max again. But again, to be devil's advocate to what I'm saying, like, if you're going to be just sending 2 regardless, Max can do that. He's not going to be guarding anybody one-on-one. It's not what I would do. It's not what I would do. I think you got to go with the guy who's done it for you all season. If you're not going to put somebody one-on-one on Giannis, and I don't think they're going to do that. I think Bam will be the one they want to do that with. It would be fun to see Jimmy try to do it. I'm not going to lie to you. I would like to see Jimmy try to see what happens if he embraces that. Just kind of don't let him get to his spot, and then you obviously have the wall built where guys are shading off who they're defending. Like, I'm just trying to come up with different things that you can do, but they're not great options. None of them are great options. You're going to be giving up open shots and threes and with just about everything I'm saying, and you're doing all of that to compensate for the lack of size, for not being able to match up with them one-on-one. And I think that's the issue here. So I don't really have an answer for you. Like, I could kind of see it as Caleb. I can see it as Highsmith. I can talk myself into Love for spurts, but there's no easy answer.
Where would you go, Brady?
It's funny because I was thinking about it in terms of like the Highsmith thing specifically. Like, I was at first thinking Love just for the factor of I just think it makes more sense just one-on-one stuff. But if, let's say, you do Highsmith, it doesn't, just because you're saying Max Strus can't start at the 4 doesn't mean he can't start. And I wonder if they could get weird, because let's be honest, I think they have to get weird
Yep.
This is a series that you are not just going to match up and play their game and go and walk out with a win. You have to get weird here, and you have to try to just find advantages for yourself. Where I wonder if they start Tyler, and I hate saying this because and Spo always says positionless, but let's just say Tyler at the 1 in air quotes, and maybe start Tyler, Max, Jimmy, a Highsmith type, and Bam, and just kind of play out of there. Let Highsmith type kind of play Giannis a little bit one-on-one. I mean, it's not going to be one-on-one. They're going to shade help, but that allows Jimmy to guard Middleton, and that allows certain things. And you still, if you're starting Highsmith, starting Max and Tyler at least gives you a lot more trust offensively to kind of have the spacing that you want, be able to run your offense. And I guess same goes for Caleb, because me and I was talking about the game yesterday. We're like, who's going to close this game? And I was like, I think honestly it's Tyler, Max, Jimmy, Caleb, Bam. So even if they do it with Caleb, I think there's a chance that they could end up starting kind of that closing lineup from last night, from this past play-in game. So it's a weird dynamic. I know, like it seems odd, but it's like, then the question is, what do you do with Gabe or Kyle? Well, Gabe and Kyle aren't even like givens right now. Like they're both questionable at this current state. So we don't even know if they're going to play. I know Kyle said he's going to play, but you never know what's going to happen with a knee like that. Gabe's injury, we didn't know what was going to happen there either. And they've liked playing Gabe and Kyle next to each other anyway, where they can work things around there anyway. And I know the Bucks can go a little smaller off their bench anyway. So it's a weird dynamic, but I just think they have to just kind of figure some things out and change some things up, because I just don't think you can go in here traditionally. So, and I know let me just finish and say that the fact of Tyler and Max, I know in the backcourt is scaring people hearing it, because that's just sounds like food defensively, but they have to do something to kind of match up where it's like, you cannot just sit here and be one-dimensional where it's Love in, and yeah, they're matching up with Rook, but it's like blitz, recover, and Giannis. It was much as we talked about, and you started this off with the threes. Yeah, they shoot a lot of threes and they make a lot of threes, but they also have the most dominant player in the entire NBA. So you make one mistake on your recovery, and Giannis is coming down the lane, he's dunking over the top of you. So it's just a weird dynamic, and like we said earlier, you kind of have to be perfect, because any mistake you make, they're gonna kind of be able to kind of capitalize. So I wonder if they could end up doing a thing, because this, Ethan, I know this, we talked about this before with Tyler at the 1. Jimmy's going to be handling anyway. This is the playoffs. He's high usage anyway. So it's not like you're worried about Tyler being like not settling the offense or something. So I wonder if they can go in that direction.
All right. I like the way you're both thinking. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. He's going to start Kyle or Gabe. He 100%. Just is. Because no matter how much he talks about being positionless, when push comes to shove, he doesn't go positionless. I mean, even we talk about the bubble. Okay, for most of that season, Kendrick Nunn, who's a 2-guard, was essentially playing point. But when it came to the playoffs, he put Goran Dragic, who was never really a pure point, but closer to it, in at the point guard position and let him handle the ball a lot, and he was a primary scorer. I just don't think – I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think he's going to – you know why? I don't think he's going to put that much pressure on Tyler. I think that – because here's where I come down on this, whatever the lineup is. Tyler Herro is the most important player in this series for Miami. He's the swing player. And it's in part because I expect something from Jimmy, regardless of how he played against this team in the playoffs a couple of years ago. And also because there are certain things I do not expect from Bam at this stage. I expect him to play the kind of defense he played in the last 4 minutes yesterday. But as far as the offensive stuff, you're taking a guy whose confidence offensively is already a little shot. They're not getting him the ball in his spots. He's not getting to his spots on his own. And now he's going against the team that started all this a couple of years ago with the way that they defend him, where he's going to see length. He's going to see Brooks tricks. He's going to see space that's not really space. He's going to see all kinds of different issues. I just don't think he can be counted on to be a big factor in this series offensively. I mean, he'll have moments. He'll have maybe a game or two. To me, the swing player is Tyler, and I understand that they guard a little differently than they did before, and that they've got Drew Holiday, who's an all-world defender. But I also remember the conversations I had with Tyler prior to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. He wanted to see Milwaukee. He didn't want to see Boston. He wanted to see this drop because he was going to get more of the drop against them than he was against Boston. All right, let's go. I mean, he's had some of his best games against this team. He's had some of his best games in that building. He's the swing guy. He has to have a monster series. I'm not just talking about averaging 21 on 45% shooting. No, he needs to have a monster series. To me, that is, if we're to talk about outlier chances for them to make this thing interesting, he's the X factor in this particular series. Yes, they need to get shooting from some other guys, whether it's Kyle, who did declare that he would play Sunday. So we'll see how effectively, because typically when he's had knee problems, he has not been effective, or the hamstring problems last year. And yes, they need Caleb to play better than he played in spots during that past series. And yes, they need Strus to be more consistent. You're not going to get what you got from him the other night all the time, obviously. But to me, it's about Tyler. And I think they're going to keep Tyler in his more comfortable spot at this point, which is to play off somebody and to be able to, handle the ball at times. So I don't think that will be the change. I think, to me, I think he's going to go back to Love as a starter. I think that's Alex. Your thoughts? You jumped in there. Don't like it?
I do. Like I said before, I think it makes sense in theory, and I think the fact that you picked up Love and there's no easy answer, like I think it's worth a try. I do think it's worth a try, and I was wrong with. Yeah, exactly. It's the playoffs. You got to have a short leash on Kevin Love. Like he had a really nice game against the Bulls, not so much against the Hawks, and I think a lot of times like in that first stint, whether or not it's going to be a great game for him. And it might be a little bit unfair to judge somebody on that first stint, right? But I think like the theory is there for him against the Bucks. They drop a lot. Like that's still what they do, even though they don't give up nearly as many threes as they used to. When the Heat first beat them, they're still dropping. And like Brady mentioned before, it's Drew Holiday a lot of times like navigating those screens. So there's going to be nothing easy, and why I think it's going to come down a lot to, the Stars making end of shot clock shots, and role players, you hope that they make their threes. But with the Love thing, the pick and pop like always allows for, the big man to be open if they're just going to be dropping with Lopez there, right? So you hope that he can drain some of those if Lopez is not going to be out there contesting. And then you hope that he can just kind of take on that Lopez matchup, because I don't think Lopez is going to like cook him in the post or anything like that. I think
which is funny, Alex, because when he came into the NBA, that was his thing. That was like he was. I know he's become a different player, sure. Brooke has, but that was his thing. He was like declared to be a poor man's Tim Duncan when he came into the NBA because of his footwork.
He's still really good at it. Like he's a natural post scorer. I'm not like diminishing him. I just think it's I think that's more of something like when you get a small guy switched onto him. I don't think they're going to be running Brooke Lopez post ups when Love is matched onto him when he's so wide. Like I don't think he's going to be able to leverage Love for position that well, which is I think why you maybe try it out and see how it looks. And like Brady said, short leash. Like if it's just not working, if it looks like a disaster, you know what to do. And when disaster strikes,
oh my God, that's the best segue you've ever given. Okay, so let's mention that because disaster has struck in my area. I live in downtown Lauderdale, so was Brady. That's why he's podcasting from a different room right now. So maybe he needs to call Water Cleanup of Florida. Reach out to them. They're based in Boca Raton. You can find them at WCUFL.com. Water Cleanup of Florida can help you if you've got leaks, mold, any of that stuff. We know a lot of people have leaks this week. 25 inches of rain in Fort Lauderdale and Broward County in just 24 hours. My car happened to go through one of those potholes yesterday, so I actually reached out to U Break Will Fix. We'll talk about them on another episode. Water Cleanup of Florida. They can fix your problem. Again, they are fully licensed and certified. They're based in Boca Raton, but they service the entire area. They do work all the way down to the Keys, all the way out to the west coast of Florida. They were out helping the people in Fort Myers after they had the storms. Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. Again, that's WCUFL.com. And they've got this great program now. It's a membership program. And they give you preventative maintenance. And you should know by now, you take care of things beforehand. Make sure that your house is inspected, and they give you the tips and all that stuff, hurricane priority service, air quality testing, and more. So reach out to Michael, 954-579-0356, 954-579-0356. Check out their 70-plus five-star reviews on Google and go to WCUFL.com. Again, that's WCUFL.com. Mention 5 Reasons, and they'll give you a discount. When you got the schmutz,
they've got the guts.
There you go. Yeah, question mark there at the end. All right, but at least you jumped in this time.
I'm not Leif, man.
No, I know that. Well, Leif will be on here. Leif was on playback picking the Heat in 7, so that's I guess he'll claim that one, but I think he's going to make a separate prediction to me privately. But he'll throw that one out there for you people there. He's going to get mad at me for saying that. All right, so we basically can't agree on what he's going to do with the starting lineup. There are different directions that he can go, but either way, we kind of know what the Bucks rotation is going to be at this stage. Okay. It's going to be Brook. It's going to be Giannis. It's going to be provided that Middleton starts. He had a full practice, so apparently they can stretch him out a little bit more. Grayson Allen is now, I guess, they're starting 2 guard, and then Holiday. And then their bench is Javon Carter's been playing ahead of Dragic, Jay Crowder, Joe Ingles. Now that he's healthy. By the way, fun fact: top 3 teams in the East this year have only one undrafted player in their rotations, and that's Joe Ingles. Philadelphia has a bunch of second-round picks, but they don't have undrafted guys. Just, again, different way of team building. And then I'm missing somebody. Oh, and Bobby Portis, who's a 6th Man of the Year candidate. So Portis, Crowder up front, Javon Carter, and Ingles. And that doesn't even go when they go deeper than 9. If they need to plug someone in, they'll have Connaughton, who's coming back healthier now, I guess, Dragic, and others. They have a lot of good players. Like, foul trouble is not going to upset them. They got a lot of different directions that they can go. So let's see on the Miami's end. Like, if the Bucks, if somebody gets hurt, the Bucks need to go deeper than 7, deeper than 8, deeper than 9. They can do that. Is there an X factor player for Miami in this series? Like, I'll just throw this at Brady first because I know how he feels about this, but I'll let him. Is there a role for Victor Oladipo in this series?
Oh God.
Wait, that was Alex that jumped in with the "oh God." I don't want Brady claim.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
You're the Depot guy, Brady.
I know if Alex is saying "oh God," I don't know what my response should be, but I don't think so. Like, this is the time now where it's like I don't think they should be expanding; they should be shrinking. So I think we know what that is at this time. But like, if you're going to try new things, you have to try things that are more front court based that can actually, if you're going to throw in guys at the end of your rotation, you need to have something that can guard Giannis or something to that extent. I just think maybe if you're that jammed offensively and you're like, Depot, just go get a bunch of shots up. But even if that's the case, I don't think that's anything positive. I don't think they're ever going to just go out there and do that stuff. So I don't think so. Like, I think they stay kind of with this, as much as we don't know the starting lineup, I think we know the group of players that are potentially going to play. We talk about X factors. Portis always feels like an X factor against Miami, but he really feels like an X factor in this series to me because I don't see somebody for Miami that can guard him. Like, if they put Love at backup 5 or if they start him and he's facing him, I think that's, there's mismatches there. If they start kind of doing the Cody Zeller as backup big for the short stint that Bam's out, also it's a weird dynamic of guarding him. So it's like, I really don't know. I think he's going to obviously have a big series, but I really do agree with you. I know last series or the Hawks playing game, we had a different X factor. I do totally agree. I think the only, maybe if I could differ is maybe I can lean Bam, but I do personally lean Tyler in terms of Heat X factors. I just think if he is able to kind of be that on-ball player that he's been against the Bucks in the past, I know it's a little bit different in playoff series when they're kind of able to lock in on him, but they just need him to be able to hit the shots that he's hit against that drop. If they're not falling, it's going to look exactly like 2021 playoff series when they were just getting a bunch of shots that they wanted and it didn't matter. Like Goran, Kendrick, Tyler were all just pulling up at the free throw line and just couldn't knock anything down. So if like Tyler's able to do that, it opens everything up for them. Then all of a sudden, Bam's looks at the rim look a lot better. All of a sudden, Jimmy's drives don't have to work as hard. You look at the fact Max's threes look a lot freer because they're helping down on Tyler when he's driving into his pull-up. So like everything revolves around him, which is weird because we talked about it last season in the playoffs where there was like certain teams that were focused on him and it didn't really work in a lot of teams' favor, even though they came up short. The teams that kept going at Tyler, it was just opening more things up for Jimmy. But this is a base kind of defense that they haven't faced in that playoff series where it's more so built to kind of stop Jimmy-like players almost, like the fact that they're not going to allow Jimmy just plunge to the rim. But then I really do believe to counter that, Jimmy Butler will still plunge to the rim. Like, he does not care about your defensive coverages. Like, that's what I've learned over this amount of time, that it really doesn't matter. Jimmy's going to be Jimmy. So I do agree that Tyler's the X factor. And it's a completely other X factor on the other side because I think it's a big man. But to answer your original question, no new players, no Depot, I don't think. The only one is that I think we could see surprise is Highsmith.
Well, I noticed he doesn't care anymore by him going 1-on-4 in transition yesterday. And you're right, he doesn't care. Alex, could we see Cody Zeller in this series?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure exactly how it would work, right? Because I don't know that he would play like with Kevin Love, and they might have to pick between the two as backup fives if Love is not going to be starting. So yeah, it does feel like a series that he could match up in, like Brady said, it's gotten to the point with the way that the Heat are so small that Bobby Portis is a freaking matchup problem. Like, that is not good. And I know I've always like talk down on Bobby Portis as a joke. He's absolutely a matchup problem. Obviously, not to the same degree as others, but that's just, it illustrates the I think the roster construction issues with this team that we all are familiar with at this point. But yeah, like because of that, you might see some weirder, bigger lineups that we haven't necessarily seen. Like this would be the team to do it against. Because it's not like the bigs they're playing outside of Giannis are like extremely mobile or anything like that. I think, oh man, there's just no easy answer. That's really what I keep coming back to with this team. Like, I don't know. I'm really interested to see what Spo comes out with tomorrow because I'm just not sure what he's going to go with any of this. I think Cody Zeller plays. I don't think Depot plays. I agree with Brady. I think Highsmith probably gets in there. I just don't know. Like, I think we might see Spo shift in game plans, which is usually a sign of something not good happening. But like Brady said before, you have to get weird. You have to try different things because, there is no right answer. I know I keep saying it. It's just, man, matching up with this team is going to be so tough. And I spent the whole season talking about how they're going to, it feels like they're headed for a similar ending as 2 seasons ago. I didn't think it was going to literally end up against, with them playing the Milwaukee Bucks again. I think it's kind of poetic that they're right back here again. And just the way that both seasons played out, with the offseason beforehand, losing the starting power forward that got you to the playoff run. That was a big part of the playoff run, I mean, and then not adding anybody, things not working out, and all of a sudden you're on the brink of getting swept. And
now they picked up the power forward that you replaced with the other power forward that you took from them.
And the starting point guard from that team.
Correct. And neither of those guys are with you now. They even have Myers Leonard, who literally started that season for the Heat, even though he hasn't played a whole bunch for the Bucks since they signed him. I'll just close here, and we thank our sponsor, and then we're going to give our official picks here before we close. We'll just do the picks right afterwards. Prize Picks, use code 5FIVE, MiamiGamingParties.com. Check them out. That's one of our coolest sponsors, actually. Water Cleanup of Florida, mentioned them before. WCUFL.com. Get in their maintenance program. You're certainly going to need it if you've learned anything from what happened here in Broward County this week. And also BetterEdge.com. Use code 5RSN. I look, the way the NBA works, okay, and Riley knows this because he's been on both sides of this, is that there's the hunted and the hunter, right? There's the hunted teams in each conference, and then there's the teams that are hunting. And Pat Riley, for years and years and years, was on a hunted team with the Lakers. Everybody was trying to match up with a team you could not match up with because the only team that can match up with them was the one in Boston, okay? And maybe Philadelphia briefly, and maybe Houston for a little bit. But for the most part, during that era, you were not going to match up with it for a team that had the leading scorer of all time to that point. The greatest point guard in NBA history happened to be 6'9", arguably the greatest transition finisher and big game player at his position of his time in James Worthy, plus an elite 2 guard in Byron Scott, the best 6-man in the league in Michael Cooper. There was no way you were matching up with that team, but teams tried. They kept trying in the West. They tried this, they tried that, with all the other. He went to the Knicks and he was on the other side of it, where he had to try to match up with the greatest player of all time, who was playing with arguably the best, two-way player of his generation in Scottie Pippen. And then later on, whether it was whatever power forward he had, whether it was Horace Grant or Charles Oakley or Dennis Rodman, an elite power player there, okay? And he chased and he chased and he chased and he never got them, but he chased. And then he comes to Miami and he's still chasing that team and others. And then he's on the other side of it where he's got a big 3 team that everybody is chasing. And the Indiana Pacers made change. All these teams made changes to try to match up with Miami, right? But the big 3 got out of the East for 4 years. And now he's back on the other side of this where we know, and Boston's really good. We don't know what's going to happen with Jaylen Brown, but we know what the team to beat is going to be in the Eastern Conference for the next few years because they have the best player. They have the best player, and they figured out a way to surround that player with players who fit perfectly. They paid the price to get Drew Holiday. It's worked. They've added veteran role guys. They are now what the Heat were during the Big 3 era, where veteran role guys, when they get bought out, they want to go there. When they can sign for the minimum, they want to go there. And the thing that I think is frustrating to Heat fans is you beat this team 3 years ago in the bubble. It was not a fluke. You beat them. Okay, you were beating them before Giannis got hurt in that series. And here we are 3 years later, and it feels like you are so far behind. And not only that, but you're the least equipped to beat them that you've been during this era. Before you had pieces to match up with Giannis. Now you've got 6'5" Caleb Martin and 6'6" Haywood Highsmith. And it feels to me like they've lost sight of the ball here. Like, we can talk about getting another scorer and all that. You got to go through Milwaukee in this conference, just like you had to go through LeBron, just like you had to go through Magic and Worthy and Jabbar before that, when Pat was coaching them and involved with them. I don't know how they get there. I mean, it seemed like the plan was to steal Giannis, but that didn't work. And so I think that this series, unfortunately, and I hope people tell me to have the guts, and I guess some of the people are saying that 5 Reasons Sports into a loser account the past couple days. I wasn't rooting against them, okay, like others. I'm just being realistic here at this stage. They aren't close to this team right now, and I think that in some ways this may be a reality check with that, and I'm a little concerned it's going to look somewhat like the Atlanta-Boston game did for most of today. So how do they beat them? They need an otherworldly performance from Tyler Herro. They need Jimmy Butler to break through against this team in a way that he has not always. And yes, they need Bam to knock down the shots when they're offered to them. But even if those 3 things happen, I still don't know that it's enough, because I don't know what level. I mean, can Strus have 4 games like that? I mean, Gabe has been the point guard play has been extraordinarily inconsistent. You get 1 game a month, it seems like, from each of the guys. I don't know. And I think that is when the Heat go back to the drawing board this summer, you have to start with how are we going to get past the Giannis-led Bucks over the next 3 or 4 years, because they are not going away. With that being said, we'll be on playback Sunday at 5:30. We'll have usual pregame and postgame shows. I'm saying Bucks in 5. I do think that the Heat can get 1. I think it might be like that 3-0 situation where the Bucks relax. They're in Miami here for a couple of days, and it's one day in between. Miami steals a game, plays with some pride, and then goes up to Milwaukee and loses. Does anybody have it any different than Bucks? I know everyone's say Heat in 5. Then Bucks in 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Bucks in 6.
Oh,
so I have the guts today, clearly. But I'm gonna be honest. If we want a bold take, I do have a bold take. I think they win game 1, but I think they lose in 6. I think this is one of those games where Milwaukee's been off for a little bit. They can catch them off guard. They have a little bit of rhythm, but then it dies out quickly. This is kind of what they did in 2021. Yeah. Like they had game 1 in hand, and it just fell apart. And when that fell apart,
yeah, they gave up.
They collapsed because they knew that if they can't get that game, they're not getting any of these other games. But I think this is that situation where they kind of get game 1. They make it kind of they split in Miami as well, and then they kind of lose 2 in a row in 5 and 6. That's kind of where I stand.
They should have won that game, Alex. Like, if we were going to rewatch a game on playback, which is something we're going to start doing, we're going to start watching classic games. They had that game. Like, they took it to overtime, and Jimmy had it. They just ran out of gas there. But then after that, it was a complete
game. It's just misery business there.
I wonder what would have happened if they'd won it, which again is sort of what Brady's talking about. I still don't know if they win that series, but it would have certainly gone a long way to steal it. I mean, do you see it going 5, 6, 4, or do you give him more of a chance than that?
A little upset with Brady because I also wanted to say Bucks in 6. And I think it comes down to my brain saying Bucks in 5 and my guts saying Bucks in 7. So yeah, Bucks in 6 feels right. Look, I think this team has left everybody with absolutely no confidence that they're going to turn it into a real series. And I completely get that. I'm there as well, kind of. I'm just excited to cover a playoff series again. I've seen Jimmy Butler turn it up countless times in the playoffs. I've seen the way that Bam has looked out there versus the Bucks ever since that series. I'm kind of expecting him, because I know I haven't mentioned him. I'm expecting him to look that way again, and because I think there's just going to be so many of those looks available to him when their actions inevitably are stopped short and they don't get an easy shot. I think they're going to look to Bam a lot. I think the attempts are going to come back up, which everybody has been wanting to see. And I'm expecting a big series from him. I think Tyler's obviously going to get a lot of usage. You guys went into why and how important he is going to be for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they had a hot shooting series. Like, I think we're going to see more of them selling out on Jimmy and Bam in the paint. They're not going to get those easy looks because of how good they are. And look, maybe they don't need to send that much extra help because you have Giannis and Lopez down there. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat had, all of a sudden you get a hot couple of games, and not the entire series, but if the Heat got it to 6 games, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. If the Heat got swept, I wouldn't be entirely surprised. That's just kind of where I'm at.
I think the only way we'd be entirely surprised is if they won the series. I'm looking at the odds on Better Edge and other places. Basically, Bucks are being given between a 90 and 95% chance to win the series, depending on the book. If you take a look at the odds and look, that this is what a 1-8 series looks like. It's what a 1-8 series looks like. And over the course of time, the Heat have been on the other side of this. I look back at it, and first we should recognize the accomplishment, because we really didn't the other day. The Heat have made the playoffs 22 of the 28 years since Pat Riley took over, which, as Sacramento is about to play its first playoff game in 17 years tonight, that is remarkable. It's a remarkable streak. And I think it's only the second time they've been the 8th seed. And the first time was the first year. They were the first year when he put that team together kind of in the middle of the season, and they lost to the Bulls. And again, I keep coming back to this. There was a similar gap in wins that year between those two teams. The gap in wins is usually about 15, 14, maybe a little bit more. This year, 14 wins between the Bucks and the Heat. And as much as the Heat had injuries, and they did, the Bucks had, whether you believe he's their second, I believe he's their third best player, but they had one of their top 3 players out for more than half of the season. They still won 58 games. So we hope it's a competitive series. Now that they're here, Heat fans can stop rooting for them to lose, because at this point, I mean, you're in the dance. So you just try to go as far as you possibly can. I say Heat in 5. The two of you guys say Heat in 6. Or Alex is kind of straddling the fence on it a little bit.
You just said Heat in 5 and Heat in 6? Wow.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I should just end it there. We should clip it. That way it could be right either way. A lot of people like doing that. That's not really us.
Covering all our bases.
Bucks and 5. Bucks and 5. That's where we're headed right now. We're not going to print T-shirts for that. All right. We will be on coverage, though, on Sunday. We're doing playback on the road game for both road games, and all 4 of us, actually. And then we'll have a different crew that's mixed in with us, and then we'll be at the home game starting later in the week. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.